The other day I was in Dublin where I spoke to Keith Brose. Keith has a wealth of experience in fraud and AML and is currently chairing FI-ISAC. We spoke about trends in fraud, regulations and collaboration. And in the middle of the conversation, something very unexpected happened. And we'll have an outtake after this interview for you. Enjoy a new episode of Fusion Fireside. Are you comfortable?
I'm comfortable, thanks, Eward.
Yeah. Have you done this many times before?
I've done a few for Europol and a few for EBF. And back in the day when I was chair of the Cybersecurity grouping, yes. So I've done a few media training events, as they say.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. How did you like those, the media training? Did you get one of them, the nasty ones, where they're starting to attack you with difficult questions? Or
there was one of those in Brussels many years ago. It arose with the Money Mule campaign, and that there was some journalists in the room, and they were very much of the view that the banks aren't doing enough in terms of combating money muling. And
oh, really?
Yeah. So it was a little bit. We have to say that we are doing our level best. You don't always uncover that someone is going to go and become a money mule. It's after the event, once you've banked them. You know what I mean? So the bona fides are good with in terms of. Onboarding them and KYC, but then they might get tempted to allow their account to be used in terms of money muling. So
fair enough. Yeah.
So it's reactionary a little bit,
Yeah, it's interesting. That discussion about are the banks doing enough? And there's of course multiple sides to the payment journey. Like we have the fraud on the front side, we have the money laundering on the back end.
Absolutely, and it's a lot to do with the socioeconomic climate as well, in terms of the prevailing economic conditions. There was a lot during COVID, a lot of muling. People get tempted to avail of whatever kickback they're getting in terms of using their account. Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on the youth today in terms of school leavers, even targeting school leavers, and even targeting early university people, that are just doing freshers at university. Sending a text, can we use your account? Or, can we sign you up for...
Have you seen that a lot during COVID? And
we saw that a lot during COVID, and that was quite prevalent then because... and then it died a little bit because people weren't able to cash out, they weren't able to go to the ATMs, or there was very much a lockdown in place,
I think it kind of correlates to... Well, there needs to be opportunity. There needs to be there's the three rules.
Yes.
Of what's the other ones? Opportunity,
reward.
And
in
incentive or something.
Incentive, of course.
Motivation.
Motivation. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We'll cut this out. Don't worry. But so Keith, you've been a leader, a chairperson for many different financial organizations in the banking industry. You had a long run at the EBF.
That's correct, yes.
How does one become that person?
That's a very good question. I think it's a lot to do with your background and your knowledge. And I always say you have to be a consummate professional and diplomat to be a chair, as you know, in any guise. But especially in the area of financial crime and security and, AML, etc., and fraud, it can be quite difficult, because you're exposed to other stakeholders, like law enforcement agencies, central bank, and also you're maybe exposed to for example, cash and transit operators as well. So they're a different, different profession, different background, and I think you have to gauge the room and manage the room. But luckily, I was appointed by the CEO of EBF at the time, and also in terms of my current role at FI-ISAC, I was nominated by the previous chairs as my peers, and then obviously backed by the membership as well. So which is nice to see, and nice to say that I have been voted in and as a chair. And I suppose for a small country like Ireland, it's an honour to chair these European level, fora, and I think it's important that small countries have a voice at the table as well. So I think it's been rather a good experience to be chairs of certain groups and lead in certain instances.
Yeah. So what is because there is maybe some of our viewers would say, so there's so many groups now, like what's the difference between them? What would you say is FI-ISAC's role, and how is that specific to in comparison with other organizations?
That's a very good point you raise. I think it's important to realize there is a lot of fora, I should say, out there in Europe at the moment and beyond. What makes us unique is it's a trusted community. We just, I suppose, for want of a better word, we don't just let anyone in. It's word of mouth, or it's maybe, someone, reliable from the CERT community or from the Nordic CERT or from, the Dutch CERT, and then also from the financial services, someone we know who's in the industry for many years. And so we don't cast the net too broad. We try to contain it a little bit so that we build up a rapport and a good long-standing relationship. And that's very important. It's it's important to construct it in that manner, that we have a trusted community and that we're able to freely discuss matters that are important and sensitive as well.
Exactly. And so how does it work? How many members do you have?
I always find as a chair you have to keep it real and relative to members. And throughout COVID it was a challenging time because members did drop off, and there's a lot of churn in the industry, as you know, especially in cyber and fraud. People move on, and people from law enforcement even join the banks as well. So you see that kind of migration. So I think it's important to keep it real and relevant to the members. We have approximately, I'd say around 50 members in total. Yeah. So there's a member of the CERT community from each country, and then a member of the financial services. So it's a nice hybrid, if you know what I mean. So, and then there has been membership drop off sometime, but you try and reignite it again and try and, involve that country, that member state again as well. UK is a little bit challenging because it's the EU FI-ISAC, so it's a little bit challenging at the moment. But hopefully we'll get representation there again from the UK.
Right. Yeah. Of course. So the politics are important as well, with regards to who you share with and so on.
Yes, I think politics is a little bit strong a word, but I think there's a lot of sensitive information. There's there's a lot of valuable information been shared. What happens in one region or one member state could happen in the next day in another country. So there is a degree of we don't want to have an army of representatives from one country, so it's lopsided. You want to have it equal, and the smaller nations, like some of the Baltic states, have a voice as well, and they're heard, and some more so Ireland as well. So it's we have to balance that. There has to be a kind of a gatekeeper kind of model in place, because you could end up with 5 UK banks or 10 Danish banks, for example. So
true. So does that fall under your responsibilities as chairperson?
To a degree, they have to contact the secretariat and the chair. So thankfully, the executive secretariat is ENISA, so it's an arm of the EU Commission. So we're very grateful for that, and it's important that we have that standing as well. So while separate from ENISA, it is an ISAC for the financial services, and ENISA is doing great work in terms of corralling all the ISACs in Europe. So there's a recent ISAC in the space sector, so which is very interesting, and we try to engage with those ISACs as well. So in terms of whether it's car manufacturing ISAC or whether it's a railway transportation ISAC or energy ISAC. So we try to engage with them and invite them to our meetings, our physical meetings, to understand where their journey, as well as they're learning from our journey.
Yeah. So what are some of the discussion, the topics that have been top of mind for you and your organizations over the last year or so?
I suppose top of mind is how would I say, how we formalize it a bit better, because does it become a registered entity? Does it become something that is less formal and more formalized? Do we register as a company, an entity? I think that's a big debate at the moment for ISACs. Do they go down the legal route of becoming a legal entity or not? It has been kicked around for some time in terms of the ISAC community. A lot of our members are in favor of the informal kind of gathering aspect. It's not tied down to anything in terms of a legal entity. That's a different realm when you go into the legal entity aspect. But it's something that has been raised at an ESA level. They conduct an annual gathering of all the ISACs, and there is some, that would be a top of mind item.
So when sharing information, how much of a topic is, for example, is fraud and scams or in your eyes?
That's a very good question, because I've sensed over the years, we have a Code Red roundtable, and we also have monthly calls, end of month calls, and fraud is creeping in ever more so. And scams, because your DDoS attack is all good and well, but the real victims is what some of our member banks are really interested in terms of protecting them, in terms of mitigating losses, etc., and safeguarding their information. So I think fraud has crept in more as a topic and a discussion, and also sharing information about MO and types of frauds, and vectors they're using, and how they circumvent systems or exploit vulnerabilities.
Right. So what are the other topics that are, let's say, in the top 3 of discussions amongst when the members share their experiences?
Well, you can't escape the regulatory burden as well, and you can well imagine that DORA is top of mind, and completing that register and the lengthy registers in terms of TPPMs, and also in terms of doing it right and approaching it right. So for our next meeting, we have a discussion item, a discussion item which I proposed in terms of what's the best practice out there. I know it's not going to be a one size fits all, but it's going to be how are they approaching in terms of the register? How are they getting all the information they need in terms of third-party vendors, and who are critical and who are not, and identifying that and actually compiling the list that is required under DORA. So that is an example of what is top of mind in terms of the regulatory sphere.
Understood, yeah. So with regards to regulations, of course, we all need to abide by the law, right? But there's also people who feel like some of the regulations are actually a little bit counterproductive in some senses. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion?
That's another excellent question. I mean, you could go either way with that. You could run your objective analysis and which are the positive elements and which are the negative elements to any regulation. But I think what I'm seeing in terms of just staying with fraud and scams, I'm seeing regulators and even our own domestic regulator in asking their licensed entities and their institutions to protect clients more, to protect customers. Consumer protection, investor protection is paramount. And that you can see that in the MiCAR legislation. You can see that in our own recently revised Consumer Protection Code, that there is an onus, there's a swing for the registered or legal financial institutions to inform their customers about the recent trends in frauds and scams. And I think that's a huge shift. I think it's something that's been there, but it's been ramped up in terms of national competent authorities ensuring that you have digital financial service online. You have to inform your client and your customer, how are we protecting you? What's the latest scams that are out there? Be vigilant to the latest. Be aware of what's happening out there, and how they're going to maybe, how they're going to approach you in terms of scamming or in terms of frauds. And I think that's a shift I see, that there is a huge onus on the financial services to ramp up and to be live to the latest frauds and scams that are out there,
right,
in whatever guise they take.
Yeah, exactly. Consumer protection laws are, of course, some countries are experimenting with them, of course, as we know, is like Singapore, Australia, and the UK. UK is just across the Irish Sea here.
Yeah.
And are you looking at that closely at all?
Yeah, I think our industry is looking at that. I mean, it's looking at what will happen in those jurisdictions, where will they land in that, and in terms of liability shift, in terms of safeguarding customers into their best ability. How do we do that? I think it is on the radar, and it is on their to-do list in terms of looking out and seeing globally what's best practice and what is best practice across the regions. And I think that's, you can take the best parts of some legislation, and hopefully that's something that the EU might end up with. But I think they've done a fair job in MiCAR, to be quite honest, in the digital asset space. I think DORA as well. There's a lot of positivity around it. It's a good space to have the sector in terms of operational resilience and third-party risk. So I think by and large, it is a good standard. They are good standards. Regulatory burden is regulatory burden, but you're in a business and you're a commercial entity, so you need to apply.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, of course. There's no way around it.
There's no way around it. Yeah. There's no shortcuts.
So how are there discussions on technological advancements like the mobile use and AI and so on?
Well, I do think AI and deepfakes is the new frontier in terms of frauds and scams. I think it's already happening to a degree. I think AI, as they say, equals efficiency. So that's bandied around quite a lot recently, and my sense is that it's like anything in life. There's a good and a bad, or even evil side to it, and it could be a force for good, or it could be a force for nature, or for evil, I should say. So I think you should look at it in that with those lens.
Right. I
think it's important that the financial sector get to grips with that in terms of the negative and the positive. I think it could work quite favorably in terms of efficiency and driving efficiency in terms of reg tech and compliance, which is already doing. And then also in terms of, the negative side in terms of scams and frauds and, deep fakes and AI-driven phishing attempts and all that good stuff. I mean, there has to be knowledge and experience around how we can circumvent that, or how we can, distinguish the bona fides of beneficial AI and not. And I think there will be a call in even now maybe to have an AI director in the future, an AI someone who's responsible. It wouldn't want to be me. I wouldn't like to take that. I don't think you would either. But I think that's the space we're going to see, that there will be an AI compliance person, a regulatory compliance person for AI and machine learning. I think it could be a huge remit and a very onerous one. And I think it's something that I think institutions would have to be mindful of, that whether it's going to be a technical person or whether it's going to be a compliance person, I don't know, or a risk person. So
right,
that's debate, as you know, is probably out there at the moment. But as I said, it'd be a heavy burden in terms of operationally and actually getting to grips with the new technologies.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe also because the technology is actually largely created in the US. And in the US, there's a large movement of deregulation going on, of course. So how are we coming to grips with that? As an industry, is that something that is being discussed?
There's obviously an eye on the US and what's emerging there as well. How you control it is another matter. So I think, and how you maybe take the best bits of it and adopt the best bits and maybe disregard the other bits. But there has been, in the ISAC, there has been a little bit of discussion. I wouldn't say a huge amount as such. It's kind of wait and see.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a quite sensible approach, to be quite honest, for some of the banks, a wait and see kind of view, because you don't want to jump too early. And there's a lot of, as I said, AI equals efficiency. So what does that mean? But I think there's a distinct tone of wait and see what happens, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, yeah. So, as chairperson of FI-ISAC here in Ireland, do you see differences between, for example, Irish finance as opposed to the rest of Europe? And are you seeing difference between, European issues that the rest of the world doesn't have? How do you see that?
Well, if we're talking financial crime and fraud and scams, no, I don't. It's the exact same globally. It's a universal issue. It's something that's happening across the globe. It's not any different. There might be an aspect where there might be more people using mobile banking, or people are using cards more, but by and large, it's the same issues, the same MO, the same attack vectors. Investor scams, ransomware, phishing, vishing, and card not present and card counterfeit and cards, stolen cards is top of tree in terms of the frauds and the type of frauds that are happening in Ireland.
Right. And so in that sense, it's pretty much the same wherever it happens. It's just like a bulge in a carpet. If you push it down somewhere, it will pop up somewhere else.
That's exactly the way I'd see it. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It's the balloon.
Yeah. Do you remember cases that stuck with you and made an impression on you that you have been involved with over the last few years?
Yeah, I do. It's a rather small case, and it's a selfish interest as well. It was a billion pound heist in terms of the Carbonac gang and the takedown of the Carbonac gang in 2018. Huge case, many years of investigation, many law enforcement agencies involved, from FBI, Europol to the Spanish National Police. I was involved as representing the Banks for Europe and acting as a conduit between Europol and the Spanish National Police in terms of the investigation. It was the first time the European Banking Federation had actually become involved in an investigation and shared information and sensitive data. You can imagine the amount of calls that were going back and forth between Madrid and The Hague in terms of file transfers and distributing the file hashes and the IOCs to some of the European banks. But it was completed, and we did our part, and we played our part in terms of representing the banks and seeing how the investigation succeeded and was brought to the arrest of the individuals involved, which was quite amazing in southern Spain. And then obviously getting invited to the actual press launch in Madrid was something I was proud of, actually, to represent the banks at the time.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember that case. I remember it very well. Yeah, that led to multiple spin-offs and spin-outs of that criminal group as well, if I remember correctly.
Well, there was a lot of infighting as well, and there was a lot of who had the knowledge and who didn't have the knowledge, and whether the individuals were Ukrainian citizens at one stage or Russian citizens, and there was some extradition issues as well, I believe, as well.
Yeah. Those stick by you, right? They're the cases that define you. Yeah.
Well, I think it was a roll up the sleeves, and it was something we'd never done before, and only happy that the federation and the individuals in the federation helped, and we were able to assist Europol and the Spanish National Force.
Yeah. So, what do you see as the future of the work that you're going to do with the financials in Ireland?
Well, I suppose looking at from an ISAC point of view, I think I think we're in good stead, but I'd like to push it on to another level. Maybe maybe formalize the ISAC if members wished. I think information sharing is key. Collaboration with key stakeholders is a given in this day and age. And I think, we can't operate in silos. I think, other stakeholders, other industries need to be brought into the mix as well, in terms of whether that's the telcos, whether it's the social techs, the tech platforms. I think they all need to play a part in fraud prevention, consumer protection, and ensuring that the bad guys and the bad actors don't get away with those scams. And I think that's the essence for me. I think it's collaborative approach, continued engagement, and be open and transparent with those stakeholders as a sector.
Yeah, is there the cross-sector collaboration that many are talking about, including the telcos, but also big tech, of course? Yeah. Is that something that the ISAC works at as well?
We had occasions where there were other stakeholders who would be invited to the meetings and to give a view, and I think that's also very important, is to identify a special point of contact within those, as you say, the big tech, or within certain sectors. There is that cross-functional, cross-representation, which is quite important, and I think that needs to slowly evolve. But I think sometimes it needs to be hastened, and given that the amount of frauds and scams that are targeting people even now in this day and age, I think it needs to be hastened. I think I think some excellent work been done at the moment, and I think that's even domestically and in wider jurisdictions. But I think people shouldn't drop the ball. To be quite honest, I think they should continue it, no matter how hard and difficult it is, in terms of reaching out and making building and establishing a relationship with those stakeholders from big tech and from telcos, etc.
Yeah. So I remembered something my son asked me a few years ago when he was a little bit younger and a little bit more innocent. He asked me a fantastic question. He's like, "So Dad, you're in fraud prevention?" I said, yes, I am. So he asked me, "Is the problem getting smaller then?" And I'm like, "Well, no, the problem is actually getting worse, son." Mm-hmm. And then he said to me, "Well, you're probably not doing a good job, Dad." And it's like, well, there is a grain of truth there, isn't there? We're working all so hard at this. And we're doing so much, but the problem is only getting bigger. Well, what's your take on that?
Your son is very observant and a good observation.
And a nuisance.
Well, yeah. I won't say that, but no, it's a good question, and it probably is the case that the volumes and the significance of some of the frauds and scams is getting worse. But I think mustn't lose sight of the fact that we're never going to get rid of it. I mean, that's the bottom line. I think we're not going to be able to stop car theft. We're not going to be bicycle theft. But I think introducing it, mitigants and layers of difficulty for the bad actors is most important. Whether it's multi-factor authentication, bringing it onwards to, I won't use the word deflection, because I think in criminality and learnings, it means something else, that the crime goes somewhere else, which is something in the sector and I don't want to see. But I think what we need to do is make it more difficult for the fraudsters to try and extract information or money from individuals. And I think that's where the EU and central banks are coming from in terms of the consumer protection and awareness. I think that's really important. I think we mustn't lose sight of education and awareness in terms of fraud prevention and scams. As I said, the latest trends that are out there that are resonating across the even social media, etc. I recall a seasoned fraud practitioner who actually was an inspector in law enforcement. He migrated to, as you know, a lot do in retirement, moved to the financial sector and become fraud practitioners or investigators. And he said, Keith, you need a license to drive a car. And what he meant was you might need something similar when you're transacting online. And it resonated with me, because I think people need to know what they're doing online and be more aware of the consequences if they do hit a link or they do go into download a rogue app or a rogue remote desktop application, TeamViewer or any work or one of those that, why am I doing that? Why is the individual asking me to do that? Is there something malicious behind it, or something happening that I might download a keystroke logger or something like that? So I think, the education awareness, we mustn't get away from that. I think it's paramount, whether that's, online safety, online, cyber hygiene, password management, etc. I think it's still very, very relevant today, despite, the advancements in AI and such other tech as well.
Yeah. And when we're talking about awareness, then obviously the banking industry needs to, obviously they're the ones to probably need to do this, right?
Well, that's what I'm getting at in terms of the onus. I think that's where the regulator is saying to its own registered and banks is that, and a financial institution, that's not only banks, but also, digital asset exchanges and also, your fintechs. There's a clue in the word, I always think, fintech. So I think there's a race to kind of adopt the technology part of fintech, but first and foremost, you're a financial house or you're a financial entity. So I think that needs to be heightened. It's not all a race to the technology aspect first. It's more, that you should, where you're registered or you're a licensed entity, so you should be mindful of those obligations and those considerations to your clients.
Yeah. So, we're coming to the end of our conversation almost, Keith. The last thing I'm interested in is, with your decades of experience in leading groups in Ireland, in Europe, and across law enforcement and multiple industries, I'm interested, when you retire and you look back on your work, what would you want to have achieved then?
Well, that's an excellent question, but I'm very passionate about financial crime. I always have, and risk and security, and I have been doing it for over 25 years. So I'd like to think that in some way I contribute to making a difference, whether it's the Carbon Act takedown or whether it's developing a domestic fraud awareness program in FraudSmart, or else is it collaborating with Europol and EBF in terms of awareness campaigns, etc. I think that leadership was very worthy and was, at the time someone needed to do it. So hopefully I was the best person to do that at the time, and also chair the certain groups and fora I have across Europe. So, and looking back, I would have to say, well, trying to do a good job and doing what's right in terms of combating financial crime and fraud.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Keith, that I could sit here with you and have this conversation. My name is Eward Driehuis for Threat Fabric. This was the latest episode of Fusion Fireside. Check out more episodes at www.threatfabric.com/Fusion Fireside. Have a great day. That's the fire alarm, Keith.
It certainly is.
We knew it was coming.
We did indeed. We did. We were prepared. But it's only a test.
Yeah, there you go. It's only a test, so no need to leave the building.
No.
Yeah, that's funny. By the way, we'll wait until it finishes.
I think we should. Yeah.
Yeah.